Hello, welcome back to my video. Today is April 13th, 2021. Today I'm going to be going over the 2022 governor elections and how they stand as of now. First of all, there's going to be, there's a lot of term-limited Republicans and Democrats, but there's only two important ones here, and the term-limited / retiring important ones are Arizona and Maryland. The reason for Maryland is because it's not always safe on the governor level. But this is very good for the Democrats in Maryland because without a good Republican candidate for the governor list, they could actually take back the seat and have a full one-party state. But before I get too into it, I'm going to go over the ratings. Safe. This means locked or safe or 100% Democratic, pretty much. When I characterize a state as safe, it means 15 points or more, though. When I characterize it as likely, that means 7 points or more. It's a little bit more lighter on the color. When I characterize it as lean, it's 2 points or more. And when I characterize a state as tilt, that means it's under 2 points. And it's the same with the Republicans, safe, likely, lean, tilt. But overall, it's going to be a lot of safe states here. So there's going to be a lot less need for these kind of ratings. Like South Dakota is probably going to be a likely state, just considering how closer it usually is on the governor level and Senate level generally. But now that it's an actual Republican state, I think it's not going to be held back enough. Kristi Noem, which was a lot less popular than she is now, only won by less than 3.5 points back in 2018, and it was a blue wave year that did show some very little potential for Democrats, and that's better than nothing. I do think that they're not going to invest too much into it, though. Nebraska has I believe, retiring incumbent, but it tends to be a safe state. An interesting thing is in 2020, Nebraska went by went around 19 points. So it just basically the popular vote in Nebraska didn't shift between 2018 and 2020. But generally, with Biden promising everything, I also expect it to be a little bit under 15 points. Just comparing data and approvals, I definitely think it's going to be like that. And Pete Ricketts was honestly a pretty decent candidate for Nebraska's governor, and he didn't even win by that much. He still won by a safe amount. It's just something I would like people to keep in mind. Nebraska isn't the safest out of all the Republican states, but what is safest out of the Republican states is Wyoming. That is the safest Republican state I can ever imagine. Basically, Wyoming is the most Republican state, right next to West Virginia, and they already have a popular governor that's gonna retire, or no, not a popular governor that's going to run for re-election. What's his name? Mark Gordon. Yeah. See, I've actually heard of this guy. I haven't heard of a lot of these people, uh, but actually, I've heard of everyone that we've gone through here. But who I haven't heard of is Brad Little, who is the incumbent governor of Idaho. But you look at his last election, he won by a very good amount. There wasn't a good independent governor, though. But generally, he's going to win by a safe margin. Any Republican would, so I don't need to go over uh, that much of an explanation there. Arkansas, safe, no explanation needed. Oklahoma actually was a little bit closer uh, than a lot of the other states in 2018. It was, believe it or not, it was actually closer than. What's a good example here? 13.3. It was actually closer than Texas, and it was actually closer than Arizona and uh, here. So generally, it is going to go safe, though. But last election, it was a likely state, which is kind of weird. There was probably some polls that show the other candidate winning, given how overestimated Democrats are in every single state, and it gets kind of annoying. But yeah, Oklahoma is going to be safe this election, no doubt in my mind. Uh, Arkansas actually could be likely. By the way, there is a retiring incumbent, and that does have a huge effect. But I don't think it's going to in a safe Republican state like Arkansas. Now, Colorado, I'm going to go ahead and put under the safe column for the Democrats. In 2018, they won by over double digits, and Jared Polis is now a pretty good candidate, and he is not retiring, it looks like, at least as of now. Uh, I could definitely see him winning by over 15 points, considering Biden did he increased off the 2016 margin by around 9 points. Although that is partially because Hillary was a horrible candidate for the Democratic Party, in my opinion. She only won Colorado by 5 points, and then Biden swooped in and won it by over double digits. But generally, Colorado is going to go Democrat either way, even in a red wave year, especially with an incumbent Democrat. Oregon, anyone could say it'll go either way here. It's actually more of a toss-up that I have rated it in the past, but that's because I never looked at any of its past elections or retiring Republicans. I didn't do any of my research for governor, but keep in mind, if you've been on the channel before, you know I usually accurately predict elections. I 100% predicted the 2020 presidential election, and I'm going to mention that in my channel until the day I die. Yeah. Oregon, I think right now, just to be safe, it's going to be a lean Democratic state. You look at its last election, Kate Brown won by 6.4%, just a little bit over 100,000 votes. And she didn't, and there was an independent that won with 3%. And now she is retiring. So an already weak candidate is retiring in this seat, and you can't help but think, is there going to be a good Republican and a bad Democrat running again? Uh, it could honestly be a lot closer than people think. Oregon is one of those more like Democratic leaning, unbiased kind of voting states. It's like South Dakota in this kind of case. You look at California. Gavin Newsom won his last election by 23%. Already, that's kind of sets off an alarm. The past few presidential elections and Senate elections have already outperformed that. And if you if he actually runs for re-election, then Gavin Newsom is probably going to be in a actual competitive race. Uh, I am going to put it as under a 15-point margin. Yeah, like I said, a 21-point victory when he's facing a recall election this year. It's not looking too good for him. But I don't think that California is unbiased enough to vote for a Republican governor on any level. That brings me to New York. Andrew Cuomo actually won his last election by 23%, and he looks like he is actually going to run for re-election. But actually, I don't think there is any polls here, to be honest. No, there was. I think there was a. Yeah, they've already released some polls for the New York governor race, and AOC against the probable Republican nominee Stefanik, or a general person like him, she's only winning by 8 points. That is very close to a competitive margin, and generally is a competitive margin. And you look at Andrew Cuomo, he's only winning by 12 points. That's half the amount he won by before. So even in Democratic biased polls, he's not winning by that much. Generally, I would put New York as not a safe state in this kind of climate for Democrats here. Although uh, he's not a very good person, but I do see him as a decent governor for that state. So that might be what brings him to victory, not just being a bad person. Uh, and you look at Pennsylvania at its last election. Tom Wolf, I believe, is term limited, and he won by a safe margin in 2018. Uh, that's just insane. Pennsylvania going safe after Trump won it. I wouldn't think of that, but it did. Uh, I am actually going to put it as a lean blue state, though, because he is term limited and can't run again, although I believe whoever runs in his place will win. I could see it as going a likelier lean state, but definitely not the kind of margin that Tom Wolf won by before. Another safe state, or I'm not going to put it as a safe state, but generally a likely state on all counts, is Virginia, and technically this election isn't this year. Uh, Sorry about that. I'm just itchy. Uh, no, this election isn't in 2022. Same with New Jersey, but Virginia. tends to be a more competitive side than it is going to be this year. 2021 election night is going to be a thing, and a lot of people aren't paying attention to that. Thing about Virginia, though, is even though it has a strong incumbent governor, Republicans have a lot of resources to put into this race, considering there's only two major elections this year for the governor races, which is Virginia and New Jersey, which I'm also putting as a likely state. I'm going to go ahead and look at something real quick. I'm gonna make sure that it actually isn't weirdly close on that level. Yeah, no, this last election, Phil Murphy actually won by a safe margin, but generally with Republicans having more of a better image in a moderate Democratic state, I just see New Jersey going a little bit by less than a safe margin, despite who runs uh, in their place. In the Republicans' place. Sorry, I'm stumbling on Virginia and New Jersey, but I'm going to try and get back to it now. Connecticut's last governor election actually was if it would let me look, it's not letting me look. It's genuinely stuck. I don't know what's going on. Okay, here we go. No, not here we go. All right, it was a 3.2% victory. I don't know why I can't see it. 3.2% victory here in Connecticut. And the thing about that is, it's not going to be like that this year. It's probably going to be it's probably going to be a likely state. And generally, it's actually really weird seeing the entire Northeast as likely. You'd think so far the likely states mean safe because of how they're colored, but yeah, no. Connecticut was actually closer on the Democratic level, but uh, they had a very good a Republican nominee. I'm sorry for stumbling now. I was doing good in the beginning, but no, I'm not. Generally, Connecticut is going to be leaner likely. I'm going to put it as likely right now. I definitely don't see it being in the ring for Republicans. Uh, Rhode Island's last election was a safe election, and it will be a safe election again. No term limits or anything. But you want to get to the interesting stuff. Massachusetts almost always votes for a Republican governor uh, by a up to a safe margin. I have the same to say about Vermont, and a similar thing to say about New Hampshire. But I do not expect Chris Sununu to run in New Hampshire in 2022 for governor. I expect him to run for Senate and win. But if he does run, he's probably going to win by a leaner likely margin as well. But that's not what I expect, so I'm going to get to New Hampshire later. But Vermont and Massachusetts are going to be a Republican state here. Uh, I'm just going to go over the rest of the safe states right now to get it over with. Alabama is going to be a safe state. Tennessee is going to be a safe state on the governor level. What else is going to be safe? I think Hawaii is going to be safe. I was debating about that. There's not really any famous Republicans from Hawaii, and you generally need to be a little bit popular to win an election uh, against a safe incumbent, like Ronald Reagan winning in California. Well, that was when it was more competitive, though, wasn't it? You look at Minnesota's last election. Tim Walz is a very good candidate, and Minnesota has made a gigantic shift to the left in the 2020 election, with all the George Floyd protests and stuff. But I have a feeling Republicans are going to use that against the Democrats in Minnesota, where George Floyd was murdered. And they could actually carry a seat here, but generally, I'm going to keep Tim Walz winning as a likely or lean, probably throughout the entire election season. Democrats need to pick a good. Uh, I meant Republicans need to pick a good candidate that can target the flaws of the Democratic Party while carrying bipartisan support. That tends to be how they can win races swinging in the other candidate's favor. Another thing that helps that is Donald Trump being on the ballot, but that's not what happened. Uh, Gretchen Whitmer had a very strong re-election in 2018, but it was a flip election. Michigan actually had a Republican governor before that. I don't see her winning by nearly as much as she did in 2018. I see it being a swing race, but currently I'm having her winning by a tilt margin. I know last election I severely overestimated the Democrats in Michigan, although I did get them right. It was a lot closer than I expected. I never thought for a moment that Biden would be within 3 points of victory. Although Michigan did outperform all of the other states besides Minnesota in the Rust Belt. I'm just kind of by all the all the three states, the three main swing states in the Rust Belt are Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. I just see uh, Michigan actually being more competitive than Wisconsin in this election. Uh, but I expected it to be similar margins. Uh, I actually expect the Republicans to carry a seat in Wisconsin in this election because while Republicans are having a wave year, uh, or not having a wave year, well, Republicans are having a. This is probably going to be a governor wave year. I see Democrats actually losing Wisconsin. Reasoning for that is Democrats only won by 1 point. Uh, in 2018 in a blue wave year, and just Wisconsin being in a 1 point margin when all the states surrounding it are decisive. Uh, Minnesota was double digit margin for their election in 2018. Uh, Michigan was a double digit Democratic margin in 2018. Pennsylvania was a safe double digit margin in 2018. But Wisconsin was within that 2 point range. Wisconsin is way more conservative. Where Wisconsin isn't a full on conservative state, obviously, but the majority of Republicans here are more conservative than, let's say, the Republicans in Michigan. Uh, I see Wisconsin being up to a lean margin for the Republicans. They definitely, out of all these four states here, Minnesota, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin will be the state they've managed to fully flip first. Actually, Republicans have managed to flip the entire state house here the other day, or they didn't. Obviously, they were already controlled, but they actually gained a seat in the state house, which means just generally Wisconsin is shifting towards the right, not just because of Biden, who hardly won the state anyway. Uh, he won it by the same amount Donald Trump did in 2020, and with all the bipartisan vote without COVID, Trump could have won it by a lean to likely margin. So I'm gonna rate Wisconsin as a tilt state. You look at Maine's last election. If I can look at the results, everything in New England is just hard to look at for me right now. All right, yeah. Its victory with Jana Mills was a 7 point victory, but Maine always tends to be on the bipartisan side, and it's not always the past election that not it's not always the last results that you have to reflect on. It's also the approval rating and everything. I think Maine, in generally, over the next few years, is going to be closer than a lot of other states. I am going to rate Maine as a lean margin, and that's about it. You know, Iowa's governor, Kim Reynolds, is a lot more popular than he was before. And in our already heavy shifting Republican state, I'm going to go ahead and call Iowa as a lightly red state. There's a lot of Democrats that won't be happy with this, but just stay tuned. I have a lot more. Most of the seats left are actually going to go to the Democrats, but I am going to fill in the rest of the Republican seats. Mike DeWine is severely more popular than he was before. And if you look at the governor election the governor poll they had in Ohio, he's winning by 4 points with a lot of undecided vote, and that means he's at least winning by 8 points with a lot of undecided vote. Uh, but to be honest, Ohio, for one, this poll was in 2018, uh, and that was already underestimating his win. He won by actually around that amount, but that was in June of 2018. That's the last poll Ohio had, and I am integrating my non. I'm integrating my knowledge of, or my not knowledge of, that poll being in 2018. You know what? I'm just gonna shut up because I keep stumbling on Ohio. It's gonna be a likely state. Mike DeWine is a lot more popular, and I expect him to at least double his last margin especially with Democrats giving up a lot of the staff at Ohio. You look at Ohio, a lot of it's not even on the Democratic agenda anymore. Uh, Especially on the Senate level, where the only Democrat that could have beat uh, the Republican that was retiring, whoever was running in their place, the only Democrat that could have beat them was Amy Acton, and she's not even running because she doesn't even think she can win. She's better off staying, if she ever runs again, she's better off staying in a Democratic district. But that's the best you can do in Ohio. Statewide races, Democrats won't win for a long time, just because Ohio's in this area. Say if Ohio was more like up here, I mean, just the same people would be more influenced by the Democrats in New England than they would be in the hardworking economy class of the Midwest. I just generally, Ohio is more of an economy voting state, and I would put it as a likely state. I wouldn't if I was a full on, say I control the Democratic Party, I could tell them where to put their resources. I wouldn't say Ohio. I would focus a lot of resources in Wisconsin. I would focus a little bit more in Michigan, and uh, uh, definitely make sure that say Ben Jealous runs for governor in Maryland again. There's a lot that I would focus my resources on, and I tend to do that a lot. I just don't see Ohio being one of those kind of states they should do that with. Mike Dunleavy flipped the state of Alaska on the governor level in 2018 in a blue wave year. While it is a blue trending state, he is a liked person here with a lot of bipartisan support. I expect him to win by a likely margin. Let's go to the next state. So I tried to keep that as quick as I could. In Illinois, there was a Republican governor at the beginning of 2018. At the end, they elected J.B. Pritzker by a safe margin. Just if they flipped a state on a safe margin, I could definitely see the incumbent winning by a safe amount. But with Illinois being more of a semi-red shifting state, not fast or not significant yet, it will be at one point, and I see it moving down to a likely column as the first part of that transition. South Carolina, Henry McMaster. I don't hear about him a lot, but he definitely is popular in the state of South Carolina. His last victory was by 8 points, uh, and he is in a slowly Democratic shifting state. But generally, he's not going to lose this race, and he probably will pick up a few points from his last election, considering he's a little bit more approved of, and actually has a good minority uh, vote turnout compared to a lot of the other Republicans in South Carolina. Obviously, minorities overall don't approve of him here, or in general, but in South Carolina, that is an important thing with African Americans being a very big demographic here. I could say the same with Georgia, but Georgia being more on the toss-up side, even with the voter suppression in Georgia before 2020, Republicans still won here, but 55,000 votes and 1.4%. Stacey Abrams is a lot more popular now, and she will probably run again, especially since I believe Brian. Oh no, not Brian Kemp. If Brian Kemp wins the nomination, Stacey Abrams could win up to 7 points, even with the new voting laws. But generally, I see her running and hardly winning, and I'm not the biggest fan of her, but the demographic shifts and population in general uh, of Georgia, I definitely see it voting on the Democratic side once again, making it a full-on Democratic state, especially if they even get more state house districts for the Democrats, which they definitely will. I just see so many signs pointing to Georgia being a solid blue state by the end of the decade. Uh, a state I see shifting more to the right, though, is Florida. Florida by a likely margin. I definitely see what's his name? I don't know how I forgot this man's name. Ron DeSantis. I've been talking about him for the past few weeks on my channel. I expect him to have at least a double-digit win. He hardly won in 2018, and the state tends to be closer than other people think. But I expect him to win by a lot more. He's pretty approved of, considering a Republican in Florida, or any candidate in Florida, because it tends to be more divided. Uh, just in general, Florida is going to be a state that. Uh, Republicans don't have to worry about. Again, if I was a Democrat, I wouldn't focus too many. I wouldn't focus a lot in Florida. Maybe focus a little bit in the beginning with a good candidate and see how they actually do in the polls, and wait. Sorry. I had to do something. Sorry. No, no. With even with the polls weighted now, Ron DeSantis is going to win by at least a lead margin, and he's only gaining and gaining popularity, especially among conservatives and even moderates. You know, he has more of a right wing view than a lot of Republicans, but he doesn't give off that impression, and that will help him a lot. New Mexico is going to be a likely Democratic state. The last election was a safe thing for Michelle Lewin Grissom. I didn't know that was her name. She won by just over 100,000 votes and just under a safe margin, and I don't expect her to win by more than she did. New Mexico overall is in a red shifting state, but it is in a kind of medium state, I guess, but medium condition for the Democrats. Latinos are kind of being more optimistic about voting for Republicans, while white people are being more optimistic about voting for Democrats. But Latino population is a huge demographic in the state of New Mexico and Florida and Nevada, and right now they are all shifting to the Republicans. Although I do see Democrats holding out Nevada as well by a small margin. Definitely a lot smaller than New Mexico. It tends to be more of a swing state, but keep in mind, uh, they won by 4. They won by 4% in 2018 with a white guy, or not. Actually, is he a white guy? I can't look. I can't see if he's white. I'm gonna look up his name. Uh, believe it or being Latino is going to help any incumbent governor there. Yeah, no, it's just an old white guy, and he's a Democrat. Uh, there's a lot less bipartisan voting in Nevada on the on the Hispanic part, but recently it's been more of a bigger kind of thing. Uh, I, especially if the Republican running here is Latino, that could be very bad for Steve Sisolak. But generally, no, Nevada's going to go a little bit to the Democrats. Kansas is a blue shifting state, and Laura Kelly went against a popular Republican, one of the best Republican. She went against a popular Republican in 2018 and won by 5 points in a bipartisan voting Democratic shifting state that Biden flipped by around 9, or flipped towards the Democrats by around 9 points in uh, 2020. By flip, I mean moved it towards. I definitely see them winning by the same amount, kind of. I don't see them gaining a ton of support in 2022 because it was kind of a bad Republican candidate. But with the overall Democratic shift in Kansas, I expect them to hold on, especially as Laura Kelly is now a incumbent governor and actually hasn't done that bad. And I think she has a decent approval as well. She's more on the moderate side. She's not, obviously not too liberal. She would have lost. And then you go down to Texas. I'm rating this as a tilt blue state. Don't leave yet. The reason I'm rating Texas a tilt blue state is because Greg Abbott is too far right for Texas right now. I feel like against a bad Democrat, he would definitely win by around 5 points. But I think, hear me out here. I think Beto O'Rourke is going to run for governor in Texas. He said he wouldn't in public on accident, and he and his campaign were very quick to go against that. They were very quick to clear up that statement. I think he's definitely trying to clear up a clean run for governor. He doesn't want to come up on the impression that he's being very nice to Texas just because he wants to run for governor. I think he wants to give the impression that he's trying to help them a lot and that he actually genuinely cares, especially to independent voters that could swing him in that race. And then he's going to announce, you know what? I love the state so much, I'm going to run for governor just to help you guys even more. He's not going to go, this is a political scheme, and that's why I'm planning to run. Uh, Generally, he's given off the kind, nice guy look, speaking Spanish, and that actually does help the demographic vote in Texas, by the way. Just generally, Texas would shift enough to Beto O'Rourke, and just generally as a candidate, he would win. He's a little he's not moderate, but he's not liberal. He's kind of in between. He's like from 1 to 10 on a Democratic scale, he's like a 7. So, but then again, on a 1 to 10 on a Republican scale, Greg Abbott is like an 8. So that kind of evens it out enough. Uh, so on basically, I'm saying Beto O'Rourke's going to win Texas more than likely if he runs, especially Governor Abbott's talking about not even running. Although I think the Beto O'Rourke's best chance to win would be against Greg Abbott. I think he could win by a tilt or lean, and hell, even if Greg Abbott has a scandal, it could be a very good margin for him here, especially since Beto O'Rourke has ran before and almost won a Senate seat against Ted Cruz, one of the most popular Republican senators in the entire country. Maryland, I'm going to go ahead and put it as a lean blue state. I put it as safe in my last governor election prediction, but it's not a safe state. At least as of now, there's been no polls, and I'm surprised about that. Actually, they've polled Florida, but not Maryland, and uh, Maryland is going to be closer than Florida this election. I definitely think so. Larry Hogan actually won by over 270,000 votes in 2018. Uh, the independent vote didn't take anything. Ben Jealous is a very popular Republican in my state, uh, which is Maryland, and he still lost against Larry Hogan. And it wasn't because he was an incumbent. It was because Larry Hogan is more of a moderate Republican that has already gained the support of a lot of people in Maryland, and he actually managed to finesse his way into his seat and keep it for a full governor's max amount of terms. I think that's a very smart thing he did. Uh, he's a very smart person, and I think if he's planning to run for Senate, this could even swing that seat to the right. But it is a Democratic uh, senator that is up for re-election, so wait, no, we're not talking about Senate. Just generally, the governor. I meant Ben Jealous. If he runs for governor again, I would put Maryland as a lean blue state. Arizona, I'm gonna go ahead and put as a. Uh, I don't know. I don't know what I'm gonna put Arizona and New Hampshire as. These are the only states I'm not actually sure of, and that's why I left it. Uh, I guess New Hampshire, even if Chris Sununu doesn't run, he's gonna endorse someone, a moderate, and they will win. Probably, but not nearly as much as Chris Sununu. I think they will have a small victory. But then you go to Arizona. In a blue wave year, Kirsten Sinema actually managed to flip the seat of Arizona by around 3 points, but Doug Ducey managed to win by a safe margin. I don't know what that tells me. I'm honestly not sure because he's not up for re-election again. He can't run again. He's a moderate Republican. So if any moderate Republican is picked, it could be a very good seat here. But the overall shift in Arizona over the past few years is very good. And without an incumbent Republican governor, I definitely could see the Democrats flipping this seat. But right now, generally, according to past data and current Republican approval and types of Republicans, if Republicans pick a moderate uh, Republican candidate, I see them winning Arizona. So this actually manages to put Democrats at a 25-25 ratio, which is, I think, the first time in a long time they've done that. This comes with how many flips? One, two. I think that actually is just 2 flips, but uh, Republicans aren't flipping anything. And in the past election, I have actually put Democrats as carrying Wisconsin and New Hampshire and Arizona, and that is definitely very, very, very possible. And under the greatest circumstances, they could carry Alaska if the incumbent Republican governor decides not to run. But generally, that is not the case. Uh, I definitely think it's going to be a lot closer than people think in a lot of these states, and I see it being a 25-25 margin. Thank you all so much for watching. This has been a very long video and a very long day. Please consider subscribing.